Hey ladies, welcome to the Lifestyle MD podcast. Are you a woman physician or healthcare provider who is struggling to prioritize your health and fitness? Are you afraid that putting your needs first makes you selfish and it gets in the way of your roles as a doctor, a wife, or a mom? Are you tired of starting and stopping fitness programs only to find yourself falling back into old self-sabotaging habits? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this podcast is for you. I am your host, Dr. Angela, a duly board-certified internal medicine pediatrics physician, wife, mom, stepmom, and your fit lifestyle coach. This podcast will move you from running on empty and wishing you are in better health to pouring from a full cup and living your best fit life indefinitely. All right, let's get into it. Welcome. This is the Lifestyle MD, and I am Dr. Angela. Welcome to the very first episode of season 1. You might have already heard my introductory episodes where I tell you a little bit about my podcast and what it's all about. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, please go back and take a listen. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about why you are not finding time to work out. You don't have time to work out because you're doing too many things. And that may seem overly simplified, but it's the reality. So I've actually invited my husband to join me for this conversation because kind of witnessing how he goes about life is actually providing me with some interesting perspective, husband-wife dynamics, but also because in order to be successful in my own personal fitness journey as a busy mom, wife, all the things, I needed to include my partner in that. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce my husband.
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm the other half of the team at the Angela and Joe house.
All right, what do you do for a living, hon?
I work on an old car in the garage.
That is not all you do. Come on, elaborate.
Do all the other mundane, laborious chores here.
Okay, so Joe and I have been married for how long now? See, this is your job. I don't remember these things. 8 years, 9 years?
8 years will be 9 this year.
9 years this year. And I am a physician and he is an engineer. And
Thank you.
yes, sorry, corrected at that time. And since we kind of over time have figured out how to do this husband-wife thing together, like a lot of married couples, right? And both of us, fortunately, are really into fitness. And when we first got married, and when we didn't always have a little child around, I have 2 stepchildren, but they weren't with us full time, we had more free time to work out. And we spent a lot of time working out together. Mm-hmm. But since having a young child, since starting my full-time job as an attending, since moving back to Grand Rapids, since all of the things, what's changed?
Free time has gone down.
Right. But we still find a way to exercise, right?
Yes, which is why we brought the gym home.
Right. And we did that before we even got to the point where we are now, like long
True.
before we became, before I became an attending. And
that's true.
Yeah. And that was driven by kind of like some expectations. I knew and you knew that our lives would be too busy. I mean, when this started, when I was in a residency and I was commuting an hour and a half, you were commuting hour and a half. And if we were going to work out, it wasn't going to involve a gym membership, right?
Yes, correct. And we didn't want to keep paying for a gym membership
that we weren't using.
Right.
Right. And we also weren't spending most of our time in the same location. So we were going to have more than one gym membership in order to make it work.
Right.
So we kind of so that, I think one big part, one thing that I often neglect is, I think something that allows us to find time to work out is the fact that we do most of our exercising and working out at home. Now, there was a period of time where I toyed around with having a gym membership, I think the YMCA, and we did some other things here in town just because I felt like I was missing something. I think that's where that was kind of coming from, right? I feel like I wanted access to more things.
Yeah, we don't have a pool and a few other fancy things.
Right. But
like those places.
I don't think that necessarily helped my fitness.
No, not really.
No.
Just takes more time.
Right. Just takes more time. Now, so I think if you want to have time to work out, working out and exercising has to be important to you. And if you're already not interested in exercising and not interested in working out, then this conversation needs to start at a different place.
Yeah. it's easy to blow it off if you don't have any kind of desire or any kind of accountability.
Right. And if you have that desire and that accountability to work out and you're not doing it, my assumption is that the reason you're not doing it is because you're trying to do too many other things. And I've found myself in that doing that very same thing at different times in my life. And it's usually for me, I'm trying to do too much work, trying to do all the tasks at home, and not like we kind of alluded to in the beginning, and we'll get more into that, the things that you do around the house versus the things I do around the house. But I'm kind of like the thinker, planner, organizer kind of person, and you're the doer. Mm-hmm. And that mental energy of that kind of like sweeps me away and just kind of can zap me of energy and keep me from doing things. And I find that if I get so consumed by those things and I'm not taking care of my physical health, that it's harder for me to think, if that makes any sense. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, because it ends up being something on your mind. So it gets in the way of, I guess, the other stuff you want to think about.
Right. So I don't know that we ever actually had a conversation where we made a conscious decision that I was going to do, at least not early on, that I was going to do this and you were going to do that. And these are the things that we were going to do to allow each other to do things that needed to fulfill our needs. I think we just realized that we both had needs that needed to be met. And we kind of stepped in and filled those needs for the other person so that that other person in our relationship was successful. Right.
Yeah. I still, in my mind, I still have the schedule that you made. I don't know. I say recently, but it's probably been a while, of days of the week and who does what when.
Yeah.
But we haven't necessarily followed that explicitly in a while.
But I think that did lay the foundation for kind of how we think about how we spend our time. But that kind of evolved out of the fact that it seemed like things were kind of dismantling. Like whenever we haven't had structure around how we use our time, whether it's making meals, exercising, getting our son to bed, whenever we didn't have structure, where we had like, it would either things would get dropped or inevitably someone would get disappointed. And I feel like a lot of times, well, you would get disappointed too, but I feel like a lot of times I felt like I was sacrificing what I wanted to do because like Miles needed to bed, we needed to eat, and you were going to go do your thing no matter what. Like if you had in your mind that you were going to go work out, you were going to go work out. Would you say that that's a fair statement?
Yeah.
Not all the time. But
right.
I think that's very male characteristic. Like once you if you were going to work out and you were going to do that, you were going to do it. Like you're not necessarily going to let other things, like your mind isn't occupied by all these other tasks that need to happen necessarily. I mean, that's not entirely true, but I just see that tendency, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm like, nope, I've got to, Miles got to brush his teeth. We haven't had dinner. Or we got to make dinner. We got to do all these things. And and instead of having that conversation about that stuff, I'm getting mad. I'm not working out. And then I'm just doing the things. And then I'm left frustrated. And so that's not something that's happened often, but it started happening more frequently at some point. And I said, okay, look, this is not going to work.
I noticed you put us at other sides of the table. Is that intentional to keep some sort of distance between us?
Well,
do you feel a physical separation is wise?
You get a little touchy-feely. So in an effort to combat that frustration and to keep my temper calm so that I wouldn't get frustrated about not being able to do the things I wanted to do for myself. And in this case, working out, that's a frequent point of tension for us, which is interesting. I don't know that that's true for a lot of couples. Like we almost compete to have time to exercise. Mm-hmm. And that probably is just, that's kind of how things started off with us. We always exercised together. And then when we couldn't exercise together, we still had the need and desire to exercise, but then it became a point of contention.
Yeah. Since at least I've always worked out after work. Mm-hmm. I'm not usually a morning workout person. I mean, I guess I can do running or something in the morning, but not more of a mixed type workout. Mm-hmm. So that left the evenings, which since we don't eat out, there's always something to do.
Mm-hmm. And I do not do well with staying up late. Ever since residency, like, and having a child, I'm exhausted. I'm up late right now, but I am normally out for the count. So working out late at night, not gonna happen for me. So if I didn't work out right when I get home, which basically never happens, I usually get home later. Inevitably, what would happen is if you had your mindset to work out, you would work out, and then I would end up not working out. So, like, I feel like women, and especially married women and moms, we often sacrifice our own needs for the greater good. And that's kind of like the point of this episode. Like, the reason you're not finding time to work out is because you're doing too many things. The reason you're not finding, and the reason you're doing too many things, and why that's a problem, is that because we are always sacrificing our own needs for our family, our friends, if you're a physician, your patients, and you're not taking care of yourself. So how do you change that?
You make it more important.
Okay, so it's important to me. Now what?
You put it in the same category as all the other things you do at home, and you don't waver from that.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. And I think that's what, and it's easy to say, and I feel like for some people it's more intuitive. Like, I feel like for you it's very intuitive. And a lot of times if we're lowering that exercise, like, I'm not going to go exercise because it's less important than making dinner. I mean, in reality, it probably is a little less important than making dinner. But it's not that dinner doesn't need to get made. You don't have to be the one to do it. And that was the changing point. And we kind of have inadvertently kind of like roundabout done this magical dance for a while where we just kind of navigated that until it didn't work anymore, until there were all these unstated expectations and unstated things where you would do your thing and I would do my thing. And because we weren't talking about it, we kind of fell into this rut of where I'm just going to sacrifice myself because that's what women, moms do. I'm going to make my stuff less important and I'm going to take care of everyone else. And then you end up being frustrated. So then we had this conversation. I said, okay, look. And I think it was after I read this book. I'm going to have to pull up the name of this book. It's a really great book. If you haven't read it, you should check it out. And when I got around to reading this book, I think we had already started having some of these conversations. So all of the ideals in the book weren't novel to me. But I said, okay, let's look at our days of the week. What needs to happen on, this day, this day, this day. What is my schedule like? What is your schedule like? How many days a week do you want to work out? How many days a week do I want to work out? Having a conversation about the fact that we're probably not going to work out 5 days a week. Like, practically speaking, there might have been a time in our life when we did, and there was, but that's not going to happen right now. So just having like a real heart to heart about what's realistic, about what we can do, and then how do we make it work, and what can each of us do to support the other person, right?
Yeah, and that was very good. Setting aside whatever days or times, well, we had the main categories of food, working out, and then dealing with Miles.
Right.
And then those are the main things that have to happen. And
right.
So who's doing which thing? And then that, then nobody's disappointed or unsure of what they're doing. And then it just makes it easier because then you don't have to think about it. It's just written out. And it usually makes sense during the week. Once in a while it changes, but
yeah, occasionally we have to deviate and we have to be flexible to that. The name of the book is Successful Women Think Differently. And in that book, if you haven't read it, it's written by Valerie Burton, sorry. She talks about something that I think is actually really good, and that's if you are a working mom, woman, and I mean you've got a partner in your relationship, there's no reason that you should be having explicit conversations about what things need to happen in order to make your household and your lifestyle run. So anyway, she gets in the book, she talks about how there's lots of things that need to go on in your household. And we haven't actually done this. This might actually be a good exercise that we should do it. They made a giant spreadsheet, and I'm a Excel spreadsheet lover. And they detailed all of the things, like she wrote down all the things that she felt like she was responsible for, things that she did, everything from big to small. And her husband did the same. And they kind of like, it was a big aha moment for them. Kind of like, I never thought about all that. I mean, there were some things that he was doing that she didn't realize he was doing, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there was still a lot of the intellectual capital. There were a lot more things that were on her plate that he didn't realize. Mm-hmm. Right. And they were insignificant things because they happened. They got done. And those things, and we've had conversations similar to this, where just the cognitive power, the intellectual taxingness of being the caretaker of the home, so to speak, the organizer of things, it can be exhausting. And you have to be willing to let go of some things and be willing to first accept that everything's not going to be perfect. And you have to be willing to give up some things.
I'm working on it.
Ha ha. So I need to leave people with a few tips. So I think my first tip for women, especially busy working moms, especially physician moms, you have a lot of things on your plate, right? The first thing you need to do is, if you haven't had a conversation with your partner about what you need around exercise, you can make it something simple. Focus on like, I'm not exercising. This is important to me. And these are the things that are getting in the way. What can we do as a couple in a household to help facilitate, and have some realistic conversation about that, right?
Yes, that's very helpful to do that.
I would go a step further and say that if your spouse is not already exercising, they should be exercising too. But I'm going to challenge you not to do it together. Yes, exercising together can be fun. I think we'll probably try to squeeze in the exercise maybe on Saturday now, right?
Yeah.
Occasionally. But there's too much going on. Like I think you had a harder time with that than I did. It's more important that we get the exercise done, that we get our workout done, that we work out together, because we both feel better, regardless of whether or not we did the workout together. We both feel better having worked out. Mm-hmm. Right. So the first thing to do is talk with your partner, come up with a plan on how to make it happen. Right. And if you need to give up some responsibilities, share some things, switch some days, do something, you do it. The second thing I would do is, your workouts don't have to be perfect. So what do you think I mean by that?
Just like a guy that I follow on Instagram, Nick Urankar, he's a CrossFit guy. That's what he always says. Doing something is better than nothing, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. You can do things body weight, one single dumbbell. I mean, there's just endless options. And he's right. I mean, and even him, that's what he does. He's I don't know what you'd call him, a workout coach, not influencer, but that's what he does. He programs things, and there's days where he just does little simple things because he does other things going on. And he's like, yeah, I just did whatever, this 100 reps of this with a dumbbell. And, he was at one point like at the peak of competitive athletics. So, I mean, this is a guy who's very good. And that's his advice too, is just do something, whatever it is.
Right. And that's that.
You'll feel better. You'll feel better if you didn't do it, and you'll be mad.
And I feel like that's something that took me a long time to come around to, because I'm in this, and you and I both have this real competitive spirit. Like, I was in bodybuilding, we've done marathons, and you've done maybe not Ironmans. What did you do? Triathlons? Just stuff, right? We're always like 5Ks, and there's always a plan, and you got to do the plan to perfection. But at some point, you have to realize that if you're always hung up on doing everything just right, even in your workouts, you're going to hinder yourself, and you're just not going to do it. So just get it done. Something is better than nothing, and that's exactly what I say to people all the time. So I didn't even know that you paid attention to the guy, and that there was a person that you were listening to that or read that was saying that, because that's exactly what I say to people all the time. In fact, I'll give you an example. I had a medical student. I work with medical students at Michigan State University, and I had the pleasure of talking with some young women, and they were all single, and I was talking to them about balancing being a working physician and mom. And one of the things that they asked me is, how do I find time to work out? And one of the young ladies was saying, like, oh, well, she would put off because she wanted to do this 30-minute workout. I say, so you put it off and you didn't do your workout because you didn't have 30 minutes. How efficient were you in all those other things that you kept doing to put off the workout?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So and I've seen it happen to you and it's happened to me. If I keep saying I'll get to it, I end up being way less efficient at the task that I'm trying to complete so that I can get to that, quote, 30-minute workout instead of just doing something so I can move forward.
Yeah, that's true. I've had to do that sometimes. Sometimes I don't even do a workout. I just do a few things that seem like something I need to work on, and then I call that a night.
Yep, and sometimes that's all you got. All right, so the final takeaway point thing I want to encourage you to do is, I'm going to use the corny statement, is you need to figure out what your why is. And that's used a lot, and I'm going to use it here for fitness. Because it needs to be something bigger than just a competition. It has to be bigger than getting ready to fit into a bridesmaid dress for a wedding or training for a 5K race. You need to have something that's going to have some stick to it, something long-term, because this is really a lifestyle. And if you're only focused on some short-term objective, you're going to find it very hard to stay motivated once that's over. So I'm going to ask you, hon, what keeps you motivated?
I've never really tried to describe it, I guess. I just have a drive to, I enjoy exercise, and knowing that it's one of the few things that you can actually do to have an impact on your health besides like what you eat. And I guess it's competitive in a sense, but more so even just with yourself,
right,
than anything. Yeah, and I guess I have self accountability, I guess, as well. Like if I decide I want to do it, then I'm gonna, I might not do it in the most efficient way or whatever, but I'm trying to hold myself to do
it. Sorry, couldn't help but laugh at that.
You may want to mount us at the other end of the table so there's even more distance. So I can't reach over and get you.
So I think I've been motivated by different things, and this is where I think you and I have been a little bit different over the years. I've always looked for a new carrot to chase, and my most recent carrot was the bodybuilding show, and I think I struggled a little bit after that for other reasons too, because of my health. I mean that was just a whole nother thing, but what was going to keep me motivated to go, and if I didn't have that thing to look forward to, what was going to keep me working out when I was tired, or setting aside time to exercise or make meals and plan ahead. And I think it's that constant drive to get better and being better and getting better. Like you said, the only thing that I have control over is what I do. That's it. There's so many things in life that we have absolutely no control over. So many things. But how I spend my time and what I do to my body and what I put in my body, I have control over.
Mm-hmm.
And I take solace in the fact that I can do things that are going to be healthy. I can't ensure that I'll have good longevity, but I can do my best to feel good and have good outcomes and good results. And so that's all I can do.
Right.
So I think for me, it's been this realization of how much I don't have control over, despite trying to be in control of everything my whole life, and realizing there's so little I have control over when I just focus on the things I can control. And one of those is exercise.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
All right. I appreciate you joining me today. And thank you for being my support and making it possible for me to exercise.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Lifestyle MD. Hope that you found it helpful tips on how to go about taking care of yourself and making time for yourself. Because if you're not getting regular exercise, it's not because you don't have time, it's because you're doing too much. This has been another episode of The Lifestyle MD. Special thank you to Lou Musa for the show theme music, created with Bree Photography, and makeup by Janae for the cover photo. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you haven't already, please subscribe today and share with another woman doctor who may benefit. You may also follow me on Instagram at Angela Lifestyle MD. I am Dr. Angela. Thank you for joining me today.